the way that they put the stones up and the huge megalithic walls are put up the same way. They're identical. The building techniques were identical, which meant there was travel many thousands and thousands and thousands of years ago.
Yeah, indeed. Any ideas on the building techniques involved regarding the pyramid construction? Do you have any clue?
The pyramids themselves, to be honest with you, are not so exciting.
Okay.
We know how they were built, even though a lot of people will say that it's a mystery. It's no mystery. We know they made huge ramps. You'll see it from the air and the satellite photographs too. And they make a ramp in a straight line that could be almost a mile long, with a gradual gradient. And they'd build the bottom shell, and they would build up and build the rooms inside. As they completed it, they go up and up and up and up. And so, with thousands of slaves who were cheap in those days, they were disposable. You'd build anything you wanted to. And so there's not a great, even the Great Pyramid of Cheops or Cheops, or Khufu is the real name. Even that one wasn't made perfectly, and that's why it wasn't capped, because one of the sides of it is a fraction shorter than the other three. So that they couldn't put the capstone on.
Okay. All of the geometry that people, discover in these monuments and so forth. I mean, do you think that there's anything to it, or just coincidence, or any takes on it?
Well, no, there's no doubt at all. There's very good building technique. Geometry itself is ancient. We haven't really improved on the science of geometry since the times of ancient Egypt or the ancient Greeks. They gave us most of our mathematics.
Yeah, sure.
And they had it all worked out, but way back then. So nothing astounds me. Now, when they came in the 1800s, when the Masonic groups tried to mystify it and claim that through the measurements you could relate that to language and dates and times, for prediction of the future, that was the big con which they pulled on the public. They gave them a great mystery and said, oh my God, everything that happens is predicted in these measurements. And that's nonsense.
Interesting. I'm reminded of a document from Destiny magazine, a Catholic paper, I guess, back in the 60s, or was it 30s? It doesn't matter, actually, because they had a drawing of the Great Pyramid in there with a diagram depicting, I guess it was September 17th, 2001, as something they refer to as the Day of Trumpets, when everything would change, or some drastic measures were going to take in regards to the end time scenario of the church and so forth. So I mean, that might be a clue to that these guys again were involved in the mega ritual of 9/11, as it is.
Oh, they had the mathematics, because they went by the solar clock and they went by the heavens, because they'd already studied the stars, the movements of the stars, the equinoxes. The greatest clock you have is the one above your head in the sky.
Yeah, sure.
And you can plan ahead in thousands of years when you understand it. And they did write that in to their measurements. That part was true. They also used the Great Pyramids. That was the belt of Orion.
Sure.
The three pyramids are the three stars of the belt. And so they were bringing down from heaven and putting it on earth, the actual heavens. They were making a utopia on earth by bringing the heavens down to earth. And they had other pyramids built, some of which are gone now. From a satellite or from an aerial photograph, you'll see the rest of the constellation of Orion around the belt itself.
Interesting, yeah. One thing regarding the in common history or official history, we're always told that when the conquistadors went over to South America, they were burning a lot of documents and so forth. I mean, my take on it is either they actually saved these documents, or I guess with what you're revealing to us here today, sharing with us today, is that they actually might have been covering the tracks of themselves that these people or the Knights Templar at least, were there from the start, actually building up the places over there then.
Yes. Oh, I'm pretty certain of it. They wanted to eradicate all of the history which were kept by the native Indians.
Yeah.
And they burned lots of stuff, but believe you me, they take an awful lot with them to their vaults, because they tend not to destroy knowledge, they simply hide it from the public. Knowledge is power.
Yeah.
And there was so much gold taken out of there. They described thrones made of solid gold. That would take 100 men to lift.
Yeah.
And these were all shipped off to Spain and to the Vatican.
Interesting.
Masses of wealth to use in a future program, an ongoing program. And that's what it was. And they tried to eradicate all the old culture. What's interesting too is if you were to even destroy a people who had all of those abilities, the fact that they didn't re-establish themselves in the same way tends to show you that the abilities they had shown had been taught to them, they weren't natural to them. Yeah, otherwise, they would have done the same all over again and built new cities themselves.
Yeah, because one thing I was kind of amazed by was when were looking at pictures of Teotihuacan. This is the site in or close to New Mexico where the Pyramid of the Sun and the Pyramid of the Moon is located. And I was looking at pictures from the 19th century sometime, late 19th century, when they were over there again, and I guess in quotes here, but rediscovering the site. And this allegedly have been taking place in several steps, but one of the strange aspects of it is, how come this site from the beginning actually were left to itself, as it were. I mean, people must have been on this site and should have maintained it during all these years, I think, but for some reason people left the area and just disappeared, and I find that rather strange considering the massive monuments that are on there. I mean,
unless those who are really in control, who kept it all together, disappeared.
Yeah.
A different group altogether.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that might be it then.
Because the ones who helped them, the helpers, the laboring classes, would just go back to themselves and stuff.
Sure, exactly.
And we know too that Oak Island, there's a place called Oak Island off the east coast of Canada, and it's supposedly a Knights Templar base. And they brought the oak over, the acorns, and they grew the oaks, they planted them in a particular shape. And the oak, of course, symbolized power and might. But they also left stones in certain spaced areas on the island, and it's all Masonic symbols that they put down there, or Freemasonic Knights Templar symbols. They laid out there, and they left a shaft in the ground, which is, I think, is still being worked on. It's hundreds of feet deep. And there's been a company, I think even Rockefeller was involved in it, trying to excavate this shaft, this old Knights Templar shaft.
Yeah.
This is long before Columbus.
There's a myth surrounding this place that the Grail is buried there or whatever. Isn't that the case?
Oh, there are 1,000 myths. Personally, I think whatever was buried there, if it was treasure, was taken out and probably dispersed to set up leading families. Getting back to even the Mayflower, what interested me was that was a time of incredible piracy on the seas when all this was going on, and the pirates' flag was a skull and bones, one of the symbols of the Knights Templars. They were the pirates.
Yeah.
And they were accumulating, again, wealth and plunder. And when you look at the famous names, Bluebeard and all these characters, and the fact they had a base in the Caribbean, they also buried treasures in the Americas, on the East Coast. And then when you see how certain families were designated when they came in, the Puritans, to go to certain areas and suddenly became incredibly wealthy, I think this was all planned. because they'd buried the wealth in certain spots
Yeah.
for these families to come in too and become the leading families to guide this nation.
So it's all pre-planned well in advance.
Yes.
There we go. You know, one thing that comes to mind regarding the skull and bones is, of course, the Christogram symbol, the chi rho.
Oh yeah.
And this apparently, I don't know if you got any take on this, but apparently this is basically the same symbol as the skull and bones. Regarding the fact that the X, of course, is the bones, and the P refers to the pen or something known as the head. So we got the head and the cross, and of course this is a Christian or a Vatican symbol. But again, there might be a connection here again between the Templars and their skull and bones and the XP of the Vatican.
Yeah, I've no doubt at all. Remember, the Knights Templars were a priesthood of the Vatican.
Yeah.
Initially.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
They were an actual warrior priest. The first warrior priests who were officially sanctioned to also go out and kill.
Yeah.
They trained like an army. They lived as monks, but they were given a charter by the Vatican to exist. Their initial cross that they wore on their tunic was black until their first battle. Then they used the blood red. After the first battle, the blood red for the cross.
Oh, okay.
And they were acquiring wealth all over Europe. They were the largest. They were the wealthiest group in the whole of Europe and Scandinavia. And when they encouraged widows whose husbands were killed in the Crusades, and there was lots of them over the centuries, they encouraged the widows to leave their whole estates to the Templars.
Yeah.
And they were into the real estate business and the banking business big time. They had tremendous wealth. And they were exempt. They were the only ones who were exempt by the Vatican from paying taxes.
And I think we've been over this before maybe, but I guess that the ultimate perfection of all of this is of course that the Vatican allegedly went after the Knights Templar and trying to cover up the trace of themselves as that, when there was burn at the stake, that was, basically the last that we saw of them. So they tried to, again, cover up the tracks, I guess, and just write themselves, out of history from that point.
Yes. And yet, even yet, in London, they have the Temple Bar Association.
Yeah.
The banks are run on it. The lawyer industry is run on Temple Bar. It's all the old Knights Templars building are still there. The lodge is still underground there, where they go for their meetings. They wear their white gloves. They're called the Templars.
Yeah.
It's still there.
It's still there. Yeah, that's right. But do you know what by the way, bar in that sense mean? You passed the bar when you graduated from law school and stuff like this.
Yeah. Again, it's all Freemasonic.
Yeah.
On a Hebrew type level, bar means son or son of. So you become a son as well of the system.
Oh, okay.
And the profane, meaning those who are unenlightened, cannot cross the bar. Barred from going.
Okay.
And so it's a twofold thing.
Yeah.
Every law court is a Masonic temple.
Yeah.
It's run on Masonic lines. You have a dock where the profane is put into. Now, a dock is where you put sheep. You put the sheep into a dock. You see? A pen.
A pen, yeah.
And you're beneath the judge. The judge wears the black satin gown.
Sure, yeah.
Because he is the god of that court. The Knights Templars, all Masonic institutions, lead off every meeting officially by banging that wooden hammer, the gavel, on the square, on the block. It's a square, and that starts it off. So does a judge. You're going through an entire Masonic ritual inside the courtrooms, and no one's explained to us why every country is the same, or why they even wear the black robes.
Yeah. What about the wigs?